This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I am so friggin' excited because I have a guest coming on that I've been a fan of for a very long time, and I'm so glad I found her. I will be talking to Rebeca Arthur, yes, Mary Ann from Perfect Strangers, the classic 80s, 90s sitcom that we all grew up watching with Mark Lynn-Baker and Bronson Pinchot. Yes, I am so excited. She'll be my third guest overall of cast regulars because I've had Belita Moreno and Candy Milo on before, of course. And Rebecca, she's had an interesting career. She was also in the classic romantic comedy About Last Night. She played the girl who Xeroxes her ass in Scrooged, which celebrates its 35th anniversary. And I've talked to a few other people from the movie, of course. And, oh my God, she's done so much. I mean, she competed on Circus of the Stars, Battle of the Network Stars. God, she hosted Evening at the Improv once. She was in Rodney Dangerfield's first HBO Young Comedian special, the one that, began my love for comedy, the 1985 one where Sam Kinison broke out. She plays the Hat Check Girl. And I'm going to ask about that. And it's going to be a great conversation. I can't wait. She is so hilarious. And she's so gorgeous, too. It's going to be a great conversation. It's the first show of Christmas, December. It's going to be a toe-curling, ho-ho-ho month of holiday cheer. So, yeah, here is my interview with Rebeca Arthur.
Hello.
Hey, Rebecca, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
This is such a thrilling honor, I can't tell you. As a latchkey kid who watched Primetime back in the day, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So, going back in time, I was reading that you started dancing at the age of 4 after your father had passed away, and that's where the seed was planted for you wanting to be in show business.
Oh yes, it was terrible. I remember that every May we would do a dance review. Mm-hmm. And the first time, I just remember when we were backstage, I was like, oh, I like this. And then I was kind of bit by the bug, and there we went.
Yeah, so are you trained in all types of dancing?
Well, yes and no. I love ballet, but I never, ever was very good at it. And mostly our little dance troupe was like the Rockettes. That was our thing.
Mm-hmm. Are you not even trained in tap?
Oh, definitely in tap.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, tap, and jazz, and modern and all that, because I did study it in college. But, I realized I was just an okay dancer. I was never going to be fabulous. And besides, I wanted to play all the parts, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I just admire people who can tap dance, Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the best, I think.
Yeah, there were gals at our dance studio who were amazing tap dancers. And, I was just okay. I could get by. But that's mostly what we did was tap.
Yeah. What age did you start gravitating toward acting?
It's funny. I guess I saw my brother in the junior class play, and they had the play tournaments at our high school, mm-hmm. And I saw him in that, and he was funny, and I was like, oh, that looks like fun. So that's sort of when I got interested, mm-hmm. And then I didn't actually start, I don't think until my junior year of high school. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, this is fun.
Yeah. Were you doing musicals in high school?
Uh-huh. I went into the play tournaments as well my junior year, and we won. So I was thrilled. And then I did the musical, and then I went and did community theater my senior year. And then I was dancing in Atlantic City, and unbeknownst to me, my mother had applied to the University of Maryland for me. And when I came home from Atlantic City, she said, "Don't unpack. We leave tomorrow. You've been accepted to the University of Maryland as a dance and theater major." I was like, "Oh, okay." You could tell I was really into my future. So she took me down there and left me. She just left me there. And I was like, what? And, you know, everybody goes to college with all this stuff. I went with a suitcase full of little dance clothes. And, but I had a blast. And then I just went on from there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so you went to the University of Maryland at College Park, then you transferred to an acting academy in New York, and eventually New York University. While you were going to all these schools, did you have any classmates that we would know?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know them, but I don't know if you would. No, not, well, yes, Deborah Furness. She's married to Hugh Jackman. Well, I think they're still married. She was at the academy with me. So, yes, I do know somebody.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, the last 6 years I've been doing this podcast, I have found that, you know, everybody knew each other back then because there was no internet and everybody hung out more, you know.
Oh, it's true. We used to hang out, you know. I don't even know how I did that. It was a total lack of sleep. We never went home at night.
Yeah, nobody slept in those days, pretty much.
Well, I guess that's why they call it New York the city that never sleeps, because we just didn't.
Yeah, everyone had a lot more self-discipline back then, I think. You know, everyone was more driven, I think. And they didn't need devices like, you know, the internet to, you know, make them lazy, you know. Then you worked as a private investigator for 3 years. How did that come about?
Oh, yeah. See, I couldn't get a job as a waitress. I guess they thought I couldn't get the food to the table. I don't know. But I had worked as a waitress in College Park at Emerson Steakhouse, that then became a Beefsteak Charlie's, but all of my girlfriends from college, they got me that job, and they also helped me there. So I, you know, didn't fail miserably as a waitress. But when I got to New York, I was like, well, I have experience, and they're like, yeah, no. We're not hiring you. So my whole dream of waiting tables and waiting for my big break just didn't happen. So finally, I was looking through, you know, we had those newspapers, Backstage and Showbiz magazine. And I was looking through the ads, and they were looking for actresses to train as private investigators. So I was like, well, that could be fun. So I go in for the interview, and my boss goes, yeah, no, you're all wrong for this. You with that Minnie Mouse voice and that hair, no, you'd be terrible at this. I was like, oh, well, can I work for free just to get the training? And he's like, how are you going to stay alive? And I'm like, you know, I'm dumb. I don't know. I'll figure out something. So he says, well, let me think about it. I'm going away for 2 weeks. I'll get back to you. So I went back to my little job at Bankers Trust. I was a bank teller. And I went back there to my job. And 2 weeks later, he actually called me. And he said, okay, I'm going to give you a shot. Because then he needed somebody young enough to go to schools. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I've heard a lot of dogs on this show and a lot of birds, too.
That's actually my new puppy.
Oh.
She doesn't sound very puppy-like, though. She's got a big, bad bark.
Yeah.
So he ended up going in, and he did hire me, and I worked for him for 3 years. He and his wife became very, very dear friends of mine, and he actually walked me down the aisle at my wedding.
Oh.
And he has since passed, and so has his wife, but his daughter and I are still close.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, it's a dangerous job to be a private investigator. It's not all Columbo and McCloud and all of that. It's just you're risking a lot, you know. Well,
you know what? It was really interesting. I have not even had a chance to tell anyone this, so this is going to be like your big scoop. Okay.
Oh, okay.
When I worked for Jerry, we got a case where the guy who hired us, all he wanted us to do was look into to take all of the people calling up and saying, I think his wife disappeared. And he hired us not to look for her, but to instead just take all the calls of the people wanting the $100,000 reward if they found her. So we weren't allowed to look for her. But her family was under the impression that we were hired to look for her, and they kept calling us saying, well, what have you found? What have you found? And I remember the gal that was like in charge of all of this, for Jerry, she said to Jerry, she said, just let us look for her. We'll find her. And he said, I'm not allowed to. That's not what we're hired for. Yeah. We're hired just to follow all these leads. Well, it was Robert Durst who hired us.
Okay.
and I'm sure you know the final of this story is that it turns out, of course, he killed her, which we were very suspicious of then, because it's like, well, why if you're hiring us, would you not let us look for her?
Yeah.
But we weren't hired to look for her. We were just hired to follow all of the crackpots who called up and said, I saw her on the subway. I saw her here.
Yeah.
And it's like very interesting. So it was interesting, like 40 years later, that, what was that series called on Netflix they did about him? And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I'm watching it with my husband going, oh my God, finally. But yeah, it was him. So that was one of the cases that really stuck with me after that. Because I just remember Barbara saying, come on, Jerry, let us go look for her. And he's like, can't do it. Not what we were hired for. So.
Man, that is so crazy. So interesting. Yeah, so during that time, and you're studying acting, did you do any theater in New York in those early years that you were proud of?
Yes, I had fun in New York. New York was great, but they just kept telling me to go to California, which was frustrating. One of my first paying jobs in New York was Neil Simon's. What was that called? Come Blow Your Horn, I think.
Yes.
And it was like a little traveling theater production we did. And the gal that she played the good girl and I was the naughty girl. Yeah. We are still really close to this day. I go up and see her twice a year in San Francisco. But it's just, when we think back to those days, it was hilarious. She went on into politics. So.
Yeah. Yeah, Come Blow Your Horn, that was Neil Simon's first play after he had been a writer for Sid Caesar and all these comedy variety shows in the 50s. He was such a brilliant writer. The way he wrote one-liners in all his plays was just brilliant.
Yeah, and his stuff was always so easy to do.
Oh,
when something is so well written, you can it just falls right into place. It was great.
Absolutely. So you got your SAG card from doing a toilet paper commercial.
I did. I can still remember that audition. I just was supposed to pick up the toilet paper, rub it on my cheek, and go, soft enough. And then I was like on an assembly line testing each roll of toilet paper. And then one came through and I was like, oh, too soft, and threw it away. And oh, too soft. So that was the new and improved some kind of toilet paper.
Was it Charmin?
No, that it wasn't. It was not Charmin. You know that Melanie Wilson's father was Mr. Whipple. Wilson.
I did not realize that. Wow.
Melanie Wilson is Dick Wilson's daughter, and Melanie and I are still very close. And when her dad passed away, he had a long bout of like Alzheimer's and dementia. So he was in the motion picture television hospital. But when he passed away, I have to say his memorial service was one of the most entertaining, amazing things I'd ever been to. And it was so freaking interesting. And afterwards, Melanie calls me late that night, and she said, "You're not going to believe this." She said, we're cleaning up after everybody left the house and everything. And they started getting phone calls. a big semi truck on the freeway apparently had overturned, and there were rolls of toilet paper all over the freeway.
Wow.
How bizarre is that on the day of Dick Wilson's memorial service? And it was like, it was classic, because everybody was driving home going, oh my God, look at all this toilet paper. So
I love that. That is so sweet. I didn't even realize that was her dad. Wow. So I have a memory going back to the first year of my life, and I'm 40 now, and when I was 2, my earliest memory of you was the night me and my parents watched the premiere of Rodney Dangerfield's 9th Annual Young Comedian Special. And,
oh my gosh. You saw that?
Oh, not only did I see it the night that it premiered, I watched it for years and years on that same VHS tape because, you know, I'm a stand-up comedian. That, like, began my interest in comedy, was that special. And I'm curious to know, how did you get to be the hat check girl?
You know, that was wild. I was in New York visiting. And I was all set to fly back to California, and my agent called and said, they want to see you for this Rodney Dangerfield thing, and they want to see you tomorrow. And I said, I'm flying out tomorrow. And they said, just wait, change your flight. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that, because I'm not going to get it, and I'm not going to change my flight and do all that. No. So I turned it down. So I flew to LA, and they called like the day after and goes, well, it's okay. Now you can audition in California for it. I was like, what? So I went to Rodney Dangerfield's like townhouse or some place where he was staying here in LA on Sunset. And I had to audition for him there. It was him and his manager and me. And afterwards he goes, why did you come back here? Now I got to fly you back out to New York. And I said, because I knew I wasn't going to get this job. And he goes, well, now you've got this job, and now you got to go back to New York. I said, okay, fly me back to New York. So he did. And he and I actually spent a lot of time together. He was a very, very strange guy, but funny.
He was a strange guy, but
he was a strange stranger, I'll tell you. But you know that Rodney Dangerfield hosts Young Comedians. All the comedians that were on there were amazing.
Yeah,
they all went on to be huge stars.
Yeah, I mean, there was Saget, there was Yakov Smirnoff, Louis Anderson, Rita Rudner, and of course Sam Kinison, who blew me away at the age of 2. I was never the same after that. He just...
I know, I bet. Oh my God. And Rita Rudner, oh my gosh, loved her.
Yeah. Oh, she's still out there doing it. And, yeah, God, it was a historical night, you know, in the history of HBO and just comedy in general. I mean, do you remember, like, the energy in the room?
Oh, it was just, you know, it was really, really funny because, you know, you know this, of course, because you're a stand-up comedian. Comedians don't really laugh. They go, that's good.
Yeah.
So during the rehearsal, it was like a lot of yeah, no, did you see that? Yeah, you know, rather than people like go off really, really laughing, like I was laughing, but they were all just going, yeah, that's good. Oh yeah, he's got that. So it was interesting.
They view it more clinically than others and stuff. I laugh because I'm easily amused. So, you know. But yeah,
clearly I am too. But
yeah, so like when they're all together like that, I mean, they probably heard the material already and stuff, so they're just, you know, on autopilot at that point, you know. But yeah, they view it more clinically than emotionally a lot of the time. But then they'll hear something that they never heard before and just hysterically laugh, or they'll be jealous. You know, comedians are very odd that way.
Well, it was funny because that was like one of my first experiences in a comedy club. And you could only go, it was all, you know, just down from there. Because every other time I'd ever been in a comedy club, I hadn't seen like a string of comedians just get up there and kill one after another. But, that was because that was a very special production.
Yes, it was. And Regis was there, too.
Yes. Everybody was there. It was nuts.
And around that same time, you did a pilot that didn't sell called Anything for Love, which had a great cast in it. But why wasn't it bought, you think?
They picked up the Golden Girls instead.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. I found that out from, I think Vicky told me that. Because they didn't tell me anything. I wasn't the big star of the show. But it was my first audition when I set foot in California. After refusing to come to California because I didn't want to just be another blonde in California, I come to California and it's my first audition. And it was at Paramount. And I was actually staying up on North Beechwood Drive, which is just right up the hill from where, Gower and down to. So I had looked on the Thomas Guide. This is probably before your time, but there was the only way to get around was with this big fat book called a Thomas Guide, which was a map of all of Los Angeles. And I unfortunately read it upside down. So on my way to this audition, I ended up in the cemetery that's next to Paramount.
Right.
As I thought that was, it had big gates. I started to walk in. It said Rabbi on duty. I was like, well, that happens. There are a lot of Jewish people in show business. And I'm looking around and finally it hits me. This is a cemetery. This is not Paramount. I had to go a little further down Gower to hit Paramount. But I've made it to the audition. And it was the only thing I auditioned for. That I ever auditioned for in California was this pilot. But they kept bringing me back like once a month. I'd have to go back in and read again and read again and read again. And I was like, finally I looked at them all and I said, why don't we just have lunch? Because I'm not any different. Every time I come, I do the same scene for you, do the same thing. They all laugh and I leave. And then finally they hired me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you had Lawrence Wees, Vicki Lawrence, Marsha Warfield, she's so brilliant, Paul Gleason. It was a great cast. Yeah, there's a lot of pilots that didn't sell that had great casts back in those days, and they're starting to resurface on YouTube.
Yes, YouTube is our friend, isn't it?
Yeah. Like the other night, I saw that hilarious episode you did of Newhart.
I think I did two Newhart.
Well, this one, you're a stewardess on an airplane, and in the last 4 minutes, they gave you some hilarious stuff to do. What's her name? Julia Duffy. She wanted to get off the plane, and you told her she couldn't do it. But then you did, and I'm trying to remember. Something was said, and then you relayed her message as she was on the way out, or something like that.
Yes, I loved working on that show. That cast was just amazing, and it's all because of him. He's amazing. He was great to work with, and you could tell it just trickled down.
Yeah, you say to him, "You'll feel better after a Moroccan meal," and then he gives you that vomit bag, and he says, "Toss mine in here and eliminate the middleman."
Yes.
He says it in a way that only Newhart would,
No, he's just brilliant.
And you looked like a stewardess, too, the way your hair was done. I mean, it was like to a T.
And have you noticed my life as a stewardess? I was then a stewardess on Perfect Strangers. Yes. And I was a stewardess, I think, on Riptide and Remington Steele.
Oh, yes.
I mean, every time you turned around, I was a flight attendant. And then I get on Perfect Strangers. What am I? A flight attendant.
Actually, on Riptide, it says you were a hotel clerk. Maybe you were a stewardess on there, too, but they don't put it on here, unfortunately, because that's IMDb for you,
I don't actually, I don't really remember much about Riptide, so.
Yeah. Most people don't. I mean, it was one of those shows that, the network tolerated by having it on for so long, and it wasn't very popular, that after a few years, it was gone, because it was Stephen J. Cannell, who was, the hit maker of TV back then.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes the only reason I know I was on it is I get an occasional residual check for a penny or two for that. And I'll be like, wait, I did that show? So
you were in the great romantic comedy About Last Night with Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Jim Belushi, Elizabeth Perkins. Was that fun to do?
Oh, yeah. That was my very first ever feature film. Mm-hmm. And I flew to Chicago, left my coat on the bed in California on a beautiful, 80-degree day, and got to Chicago and was like, oh no, it was October. I was freezing. But I had a really nice time. The cast was great. We all went to Second City to see Jim Belushi kind of do like a triumphant return to the stage. Uh-huh. And that was fun. And what I was most amazed with is Demi Moore could take her long hair and tie it in a knot on the top of her head. Mm-hmm. I was just like, I was so smitten with that. I was like, that's so cool. Yeah. It's the little things, I tell you. Little things get me.
Well, Belushi had just left Saturday Night Live after like 3 seasons, I think, maybe 2. And, he didn't catch fire there like his brother did, but everyone was like, wow, the other Belushi is just as talented. And the next thing you know, he's in every comedy in the 80s.
Yep.
He's a very talented guy. So how do you get cast as Marianne on Perfect Strangers?
Well, I had a really bad pilot season that year because I had the flu. So the whole pilot season went by without me having so much as a whimper after getting, the pilot the year before. So I was kind of bummed out. But, June came around. I was finally well again from the flu. And I had to go in and audition for this, it was just a guest spot. It was only supposed to last a week. And when I went in, they gave me the sides for Jennifer. And I'm looking over the sides, and on the last page, it says Rachel, a character named Rachel, who says, hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a Sagittarius. And some guy named Bulky, of course, that's how we all said it then, says, hi, I'm Balky Bartakamus. I'm Balky. I'm a Bartakamus. And I was like, oh, I like her. And so I said to the casting director, I would like to do this part. And she said, oh, we're casting both parts from the readings of Jennifer. And I'm like, but they're 2 different characters. And she said, yeah, but we're just going to do it that way. I said, okay. So I actually never read for my role. I read for Jennifer. And I got cast, and the girl they cast for Jennifer did not make it through the table reading. And then they called in Melanie. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we ended up they really wanted to have a brunette and a blonde, and then they ended up with 2 blondes. Yeah. And the guys, they wanted to have a blonde opposite Bronson, but of course they couldn't pass up Mark. Uh-huh. So, because they wanted contrast. And I do understand it, because sometimes people would say, are you the short one or the tall one? I'm the dumb one. Because, it was like, they just all throw you in one pot and go, who are you?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I found out not too long ago that originally they shot a pilot with Louis Anderson playing Larry, and it didn't work because they had 2 funny guys. They needed 1 funny guy and 1 straight man, 1 cynical straight guy, Well,
and he just wasn't, that was not going to work for him. That was not his thing, And it had to be Mark. It just had to be.
Yeah, he was just perfect. I mean, and he had done that great movie, My Favorite Year, so he's great at comedy. Yeah, my mom and I, we used to watch the show every week for years and years. Probably the whole run it was on, we used to watch it. And we just loved the chemistry between Larry and Balky. And, Miller and Boyette had done Gary Marshall sitcoms in the 70s. And those shows had a lot of slapstick in it. So they brought slapstick to Perfect Strangers and Family Matters and Full House. They kept it going, And that was so great about their sitcoms.
Yes, they were the kings of buddy sitcoms. Then they became like the kings of family sitcoms. It was like,
Yeah.
Full House, Family Matters.
Yeah. Step by Step.
Step by Step, yeah.
Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Yeah. A lot of great ones. Well, I've talked to Candy Milo, who played Balky's friend in the citizenship class, Gina Morelli. I've talked to Belita Moreno, who played Mrs. Twinkasetti, and they both told me they enjoyed their time on the show.
Well, Belita also played Lydia.
Right.
The gospel columnist. I love her. She's hilarious.
Oh, she's great, and she made me laugh a lot during the interview, I'll tell you. I mean, she really is funny.
Oh, she's hilarious. And so is Sam Anderson, who played Mr.
Mr. Dewey on Growing Pains at that same time.
Oh, really? Oh, God.
Yeah, he's the principal of the high school on that show. Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. He was my neighbor.
Oh, yeah?
We both lived on North Beechwood Drive. And one time I had this whole incident with these raccoons. And I came in the next day to, and told the story. And Sam goes, "Oh, don't worry. They're a married couple. We found him in our bathtub one night." I'm like, oh, my God.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, you guys shot at Warner Brothers Studios?
No. We started out on what was the old MGM lot.
Okay.
It then became Lorimar, because we were Lorimar. And then it became Columbia. And anyway, it ended up being Sony at the end. But for all the years we were there, we always stayed at that lot in Culver City. We were never at the Warner Brothers lot. We weren't Warner Brothers until, several seasons in. Can't actually remember, though.
Yeah. Well, because, a lot of the shows at Warner Brothers were shot at Warner Brothers, and they were all like next to each other on the sound stages and stuff. But this show, wow! So, God, you guys had different sound stages, but never at Warner Brothers. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, Full House was right next to us on the sound stage.
Oh, okay.
So we were in 26, and I don't know what. Maybe they were in 28. I can't remember. We started in 24 and then moved to 26 because it was bigger. Mm-hmm. And 26 was, I believe, where they shot The Wizard of Oz. And Bronson it's a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz. And they found out that when they were redoing the sound stage, they found yellow bricks. Mm-hmm. And they dug them up and threw them away. I'm like, no, that's awful. Why would you throw them away? But yeah, we were. It was a very historical kind of like lot to be on. It was really nice.
Yeah, and all the Columbia shows, they were mostly at Sunset Gower's.
Yeah, what else shot there? I remember when Knott's Landing shot there, mm-hmm. and they shot. Steven Spielberg shot Peter Pan there. Mm-hmm. Or Hook. I think he called it Hook.
Hook, yeah.
So, fun times.
What are your favorite episodes?
Probably my favorite episode that we did was the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
I really loved that because that was different and just very... It was really... We shot it live like as if we were... actually doing Honeymooners, like they shot it. And the guys were amazing. But while Melanie and I were standing backstage waiting, as usual, for our entrance, we heard this, like, the guys were doing their scene, we heard this splat, like some big thud. And the whole audience started laughing, and we, like, looked at each other and were like, what happened? But we didn't stop. And then we kept going. So after the scene, we're like, what happened? Well, Bronson fell. He was like doing his funny Art Carney thing and slipped and fell flat on his face. And you see Mark kind of jump like, oh, my God, are you okay? But he just says, Norton, you're a head case or something like that, and gets him back up. And Bronson just stayed in character and brushed himself off, and they kept hallway. But we were backstage going, what happened? Why are they all laughing? What did they do?
Mm-hmm.
If you ever watch that episode again, you'll see him he just goes flat down on his face.
I gotta find it. I remember when it first aired, I loved it. Did you hear from the surviving cast members? Did they compliment you guys?
Bronson did. He heard from
Art Carney?
Art Carney, and he said that of all the people that had, imitated them, we had done a really, really good job. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love the Bibi Bobka episode. My dad, who hated the show, still remembers all the words to the Bibi Bobka song because it made him laugh. That was the only thing he ever liked about Perfect Strangers.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I actually was singing that to my oldest daughter the other day.
Uh-huh.
When what was she? She was making pumpkin pie. Mm-hmm. I make pumpkin pie, so yeah. She was trying to make one, and I was supervising. And I don't know why I started singing that to her, but yes, I did. I know all the words still too.
Yeah, and I love the Basement Flood two-parter with James Nobel playing Larry's dad. That was a touching episode in the second part. I remember. There was the Uncle Shaggy episode with Rick Hurst, where he's the kids' host with a past. I vaguely
remember that. You have to refresh me because I don't remember a lot.
Yeah, he's like a kid's host who wears a dog costume. He's called Uncle Shaggy, and like Larry does a story about him, and he tells Larry about his past of doing jail time or whatever, and then it goes out there because Mr. Gorpley allowed it to be put out there, and then next thing you know, Uncle Shaggy gets canceled.
Aw. Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
And by the way, this was a year before the Pee Wee Herman scandal, so it wasn't, based on that or anything.
Oh, thank God, right?
Right. And then let's see, I love the George Weiner episode where he's holding them hostage with dynamite, at the journalism office. Yes,
that was fun. He was fun to work with. I remember him.
He's a funny guy. He's great in everything. He's really great at comedy.
Yes.
Remember the episode where Balky and Marianne are dating replicas of themselves?
Yes, and Bronson's replica was his brother, Justin.
Yeah, they looked so identical. I was like, are they brothers?
Yep, that's his younger brother, who always would play, like when Bronson played Mama.
Yeah.
Justin had to be the back of Bronson.
I love it.
So we all knew Justin. We had known him for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Do you remember guest starring on The Charmings?
Yes, I do. That was before Perfect Strangers, I think.
Yeah, my mom and I used to watch that show. We never really liked it, but it was entertaining. And I interviewed Carol Houston, who had been the main girl in the first season, and then this was the second season you were on, I think. And
didn't they change Snow or something? Snow was one actress, and then she became another one.
Oh well, let's see. There's Caitlin Heaney took over because it had been Carol Houston in the first season.
Yeah, I don't remember what season was I in. Do you remember?
I think it was the second season.
Okay, yeah, I was the little guy's date or something.
Or actually, no, you were in the first season, but I think Carol had just left. She only did like maybe a handful of episodes, and then Caitlin O'Heaney took over. And yeah, you play a hairdresser, and Christopher Rich says to you, "What exactly do you dress hair in?" And then you look off to the side like you're thinking about it. It was priceless.
Well, you have a good memory, Tommy. I don't even remember what I was doing on that show.
Well, it's funny, I mean, going back to the YouTube thing, like, I can have memory refreshers, if I forget stuff, because I literally did forget that, but I do remember seeing it as a kid. I do remember that. And that dwarf actor, Corky Hubbard, you play his date.
Yeah, I do remember. A long time ago. That was before Perfect Strangers. I think that was right after I did the pilot. Well, I don't know.
Something along those lines. So it's the 35th. It's the 35th anniversary of Scrooged, another family favorite of mine. How did you get cast as Tina?
How did I? Well, my agent was sending me around to meet different casting directors, and I met David Rubin, and it was just like a visit, just to go meet them. I wasn't auditioning for anything, and we had a wonderful chat and had a good time, chit-chatting and whatever. And so he is the one who cast me in it. And I remember they sent me the script, and they said, "You're going to be Tina." And Tina did nothing in this script. And I was like, well, what am I doing in this script? I have one line. What am I supposed to be doing here? And they said, "Oh no, you're going to figure it out on the set with Bill Murray." So that's what we did. We made it up on the spot. And Bill Murray was hilarious. He would go, wait, what? Do that again. What did I do? And then I'd remind him what he did, because I was young then. Yeah. and that's how we did it. We just improvised it.
Yeah, was it in the script that you would Xerox your butt?
Well, I think so, yes. I think it was.
I always thought that was hilarious because, she is a ditzy blonde, and she obviously has no shame, so she's doing it,
Yeah, and then I tell him to pass him out.
Yeah. And Bill Murray has that great line that you probably couldn't get away with now today about the Chinese restaurants cooking up alley cats for chop suey.
Yeah, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I gotta go.
What was John Forsythe like?
Oh, John is wonderful. I did another movie with him.
Oh, yeah.
I played his girlfriend in something called Opposites Attract, and it was loosely based on supposedly Clint Eastwood because remember he was the mayor of Carmel or something. So this was him. John was supposed to play this movie star who was going to run for mayor because I wanted a hot tub on our deck overlooking the ocean, but there was a water shortage. So Barbara Eden was actually the person who, I don't know if she was against his candidacy and was trying to, save the town, and he ends up dumping me for her. So, and that was really fun. I enjoyed working with him. He was terrific.
Yeah. And do you remember anything about David Johansen?
I do. I remember he was hilarious.
Yeah.
He was very funny. I do remember that.
Did you know that he replaced Sam Kinison?
Sam Kinison, he replaced him where?
In Scrooged.
Oh, no, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Did I know that? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like Donner was really gunning for Sam to play the Ghost of Christmas Past, but I guess whoever was running Paramount at the time thought he was too controversial, and Bill Murray brought in David Johansen. They were friends, but at that same time, there was a feud between Kinison and Bobcat Goldthwait, who was also in Scrooged, and they were both on the Howard Stern show arguing about it. He accused Bobcat of having some saying in Sam being cast in Scrooged, which is not true.
Oh, wow. There was a whole drama going on about that. No, I didn't know.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just found out a few years ago. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. And oh my God, Richard Donner directed, of course. Some people told me he could be very bossy, but others told me that he could be just the sweetest guy when he wasn't working and he wasn't as focused as a director.
Actually, I thought he was pretty funny. He was a lot of fun. He just kept encouraging us to keep trying different things.
Yeah, so you got to see the sweet side of him.
I guess I did. I got lucky.
You play a cashier in A Dangerous Woman. I like that movie. Very underrated. Do you remember anything about that?
I definitely remember about that. I had gone in for another role, and another role that I loved, and they ended up giving that role to, what was the actress's name? She's no longer with us. I can't remember her name, but she was a bigger name, and the director said he had to give her the role. So they talked me into doing that cashier role. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was a bummer.
Were you up for the makeup girl that Jan Hooks played?
That was it, yes.
Yeah, you two are right next to each other on the IMDb page in the cast.
Yeah, I was so disappointed too, because I had gone in a couple times, and I actually, when they offered me that cashier part, I turned it down because I was so disappointed about the makeup one.
Was working with Stephen Gyllenhaal a good experience?
Oh God, absolutely! They were all wonderful. We were on location up in Santa Paula, mm-hmm. and they were super nice and super wonderful to me. I mean, that's the reason I did it. They were the nicest people, and they were wonderful to work with. So,
I was in special ed for 10 years. I can confirm that Deborah Winger plays an autistic woman to a T. I mean, just all the personality traits and characteristics is just perfect. She should have gotten an Oscar. It's a very underrated movie, I think. How was the Get Shorty experience?
That was another funny one. Okay, David Rubin again, who cast me in Scrooged. I had gone to see. Why was I visiting? I went at some casting director. I cannot remember who, but turns out she was really close with David Rubin, and she told him she had just seen me. Mm-hmm. Or she told somebody. I don't remember how. I don't. But anyway, somebody told somebody they had just met with me, and it probably wasn't David Rubin. I don't remember, but I ended up being offered this part in this movie. And I said, well, do I get to see a script? No. They'll tell you what you're doing when you get there. I'm like, okay. And they said, you're going to fly to Vegas. Okay. So they said, David Paymer will be on your flight to Vegas. So they flew me first class to Vegas, and we were in first class together, and he came back and sat with me. Mm-hmm. And I said, David, they've told me nothing about this movie. And I hadn't read the book. Mm-hmm. And I said, can you tell me about this movie? Well, he starts naming the cast, and I'm like, sure. And I'm thinking, wow, he's just really pulling my leg, because all those people are not in the same movie. Not the movie I'm flying to Vegas to do. Yeah. And I just thought he was, joking with me and making up stuff. And then we did the scene together, and they kept telling me to hit him. And he said, hit me harder. I'm like, I don't want to hit you harder. He goes, no. It's okay. Hit me really. I clocked him. He fell off the stool. And he goes, that was perfect. I'm like, oh my God. No, and he was just darling. Just amazing. He's so funny.
Yeah, the whole cast.
I said to him, I really thought you were pulling my leg. He's naming off everybody in this movie. I'm like, what? So...
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie and a great cast. And Barry Sonnenfeld's a great director.
Yeah, he was. They were all. That was another. You know what? I have had very few bad experiences. So I have to say, most of the people I've worked with, when they're big stars, they're very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. You were a regular on several game shows like Passwords, the Hollywood Squares Match Game. Like, how did that start? Did you have fun on those shows?
Well, Yes. Oh my gosh. Password. Love Password. When I first came out here to California, I used to watch Password every single day. And finally I went in and auditioned to be a contestant. Mm-hmm. And I got through the first round and I got through the second round and I got to the point where they're like, we'll call you when we need contestants. And every couple weeks I'd call in and go, still nothing, still don't need me. And I knew that the coordinator, she just wasn't sure about me. She was like, yeah, she can play the game, but I don't really believe she can play the game. So she had no faith in me. So I never got to be a contestant. Finally, I show up as the celebrity contestant. And I just kind of looked at her and I said, yeah, hi. Yeah. And my first, like, hi, I guess I get to play now. And my very first round, we did the, game. And then the contestant got to go to the super password round where we go through the alphabet. She won $37,000 with my help. So that was my new favorite game show.
Yeah, you go in there giving her the stink eye, and then next thing you know, it
was like baptism by fire. It's like, oh, now you're going to the big super password round. I'm like, yikes! So did it.
You got to be on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson a few times. That must have been, oh my God, a bucket list and a half for you.
That was the most terrifying thing in my life because the very first talk show I ever did in my career was the Tonight Show. And there's actually a funny story. I got a funny story about everything. Maybe nobody else thinks they're funny, but I do. My girlfriend worked at ABC, and she was trying to get them to put me on Good Morning LA or something like that. I can't remember which ABC morning show.
AM Los Angeles? Yeah.
AM Los Angeles. And her boss just kept saying, who is she? Who is she? And so they booked all these other people, and she refused to book me. Mm-hmm. And then finally my girlfriend went into work the day I was doing the Tonight Show, and she goes, well, Rebeca Arthur's on the Tonight Show tonight. And the boss went, book and I won't use the expletive that she used for me. So I ended up doing that second. But my very first talk show was the Tonight Show, and I was so scared. And the segment producer who had brought me in to do this, I had to go in and like audition for this. I had to go meet him, and he just sits in his office and he just looked at me and he goes, okay, talk. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at him and I was like, just talk? And he said, yeah. So clearly I don't have a problem talking. So by about halfway through, he picked up a pen and started taking notes. And then he said, I'll try to get you on the show. I don't know how long it'll take. And then like a couple weeks later, I got invited to do the show. And I was a basket case because I was sitting in the makeup chair and I hear the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And I went, oh my God, I grew up going to bed hearing that song.
Yeah.
And I'm freaking out. I was thinking of just, since I was a little kid. And here I am. And so he takes me backstage and he goes, okay, Johnny's going to introduce you. I'm going to pull back the curtain and you walk out and greet Johnny. And I said, okay. And he goes, but you're going to have to let go of my hand. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like crushing his hand. So we get on there and it's a total blank because I was so nervous. I've never been that nervous doing something before, but I was such a nervous wreck. I had no idea what I was talking about, what I was saying. I was just a panic. And of course, my mom at the time, lived on the East Coast. So I drive home from there crying. They were going to send me a car. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to my agent, why would I need a car? Burbank is just right over the hill from here. Yeah. I have a car. So I drove myself. And then I was driving home sobbing because I thought I had just ruined my career. And then, my life was over and I was a basket case. I get home, I call my mother and she said, well, I'll watch it and I'll record it and then I'll call you back and I'll play it for you. Because, it's going to be in 3 hours later before I get to see it. So she called me back and she said, did you really go do your laundry? And I said, what? She said, did you really go do your laundry? And I said, yeah. How did you know that? She said, you told everyone. I said, oh my God. So then she played it for me. And, you know, at the end when he said to Alan Thicke, do you have anything coming up? And Alan Thicke starts talking about all his, you know, promotions for all the things he's doing. Yeah. And I'm sitting there trying to think, what do I have coming up? And because I was such a basket case, I was like, okay, next thing I'm going to go home, I'm going to do my laundry. And apparently then that must have been the moment he said, how about you, young lady? What do you have coming up? And I said, just laundry. So, of course, you know, that came off as funny because Johnny Carson was the king. I mean, he just knew how to make you funny.
Oh, yeah. No one liked him.
He invited me back 2 more times after that. Uh-huh. So it was quite a thrill.
Yeah. Then you did Network. You did Circus of the Stars and Battle of the Network Stars. Those had to have been terrifying.
Circus of the Stars. I was convinced they were trying to kill me because every year they do something else to me. Because I was one of those rare people that they put. Bronson did the trapeze the year before me. And I had been a gymnast. So I was like, oh, I'm just dying to get up there. Well, I was terrified. And the first couple weeks, it took a while for them to really, you know, get me going. And they thought I was going to quit. They didn't know me, though. And I did not quit. But Battle of the Network Stars was just the most bizarre thing I've ever done. They just, it was, but we won. So it was fun.
Yeah, I watched you doing a trapeze on YouTube on the show with B. Arthur hosting it, and I was like, wow, you've got a lot of balance there. I could tell you did gymnastics.
Yeah, I was terrified. I was up there shaking. When I first started, they didn't even have the trapeze up to the full height, and the guy who was training us made one of the trainers, like, tie me to the pole up there so I wouldn't fall off. And it was only a couple months later, because, you know, we trained for 3 months. And when Richie Gaiona, who was one of the guys, they were all sitting around laughing and talking. And he goes, yeah, you're the first one I've ever had to chain to the post to keep from falling off the trapeze. I was like, you're kidding. You don't do that with everyone? And they're all laughing. They're like, no.
Yeah. Yes. Can you imagine them trying to do a show like that today? I mean, imagine all the egos and all the liabilities that one would have to endure doing that kind of show today.
Oh, I can't. I don't think anybody would do it. I mean, it is 3 months of intense training with real circus people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's really a terrific experience, but you know, it takes a lot of dedication to do it.
Absolutely. And I remember when you hosted an evening at the Improv, you must really love stand-up comedy to have hosted that show after the Rodney experience.
Well, yeah, that was, and I had to do like a little opening stand-up thing. I was really nervous about that. And they said, well, just give us some ideas. We'll write it for you. And I'm like, yeah, you'll write it for me, but I got to deliver it. Then that's, you know, that's hard. But it was really fun to do that.
I remember one time Mary Wilson from the Supremes hosted an evening at the Improv. She was absolutely terrible delivering her monologue, but it was entertaining to see.
Well, you know, we used to go to Mexico. Mary was one of my little band of troublemakers. It was me, Rita Coolidge, Brenda Russell, and Mary Wilson. Talk about a strange group.
Yeah.
But they would have us come down there. The first year they had us come down, it was for some kind of benefit. And they had decided to have all of us celebrities wear these clothes and do a fashion show. Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out it was like really late and none of us had eaten and I was getting cranky. I was hangry. And I remember Rita Coolidge comes out to me. This is my first introduction to her. And, you know, I had grown up just like loving her. I thought she's just so beautiful. And I loved her music. And so she comes up to me and she said, in situations like this, I think to myself, what would the Dalai Lama say? And then I'm like, oh dear. And I just kind of looked at her like, uh-oh. And she goes, the Dalai Lama wouldn't be caught dead in this dress.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, we're friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we ran away on a cruise ship together, all four of us. We took off, and they were all like, where'd they go? We're like, well, we found some people that took us on a cruise ship. We were crazy.
Yeah. That's the perks of show business. So, what do you got going on these days? Did you take a break for a while?
As soon as when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I did voiceover work during that time. Mm-hmm. And then after I had her, I still was doing some voiceover work, but I went away to do a film when she was really little, and she couldn't understand why I didn't come home. And it was just heartbreaking. And I realized that as an actress, everything is about me. Mm-hmm. But once I had a child, it's all about her. And that was it. I decided to retire, and I stayed home with the girls.
Oh, I respect you so much for that.
Well, then they turned into teenagers, and I wanted to give them away. But
no, you wanted to go back to work.
I actually did. I went and I did a short film, and I guess this was in like 2015 or something. It was just like a fun. I read it while looking at my youngest daughter was acting, and she was doing films, doing little parts here and there. And so I was looking at some breakdowns, and I happened to see this thing, and I was like, oh, this is just so sick. I love it. So I submitted myself just on a whim, and that guy called me in. I was like, okay. So I went in and I read for them, and afterwards I was like, wow, that's the first audition I've been on in like 15 years. And they looked at me really funny, like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So I left, and then they called me, and they said, you're our favorite one for this part so far. Will you do it? And I said, sure. So I go to the table read, and they hired this nice gentleman to play my husband. And he says, as we're sitting at the table, he goes, by the way, I always loved your show. And I said, well, thank you. And then these guys go, what show? And I was like, oh, I used to do a show. And they were like, you did? And then they immediately started Googling me. They had no idea that I had ever done anything before.
Yeah, I'm shocked at how so many of the younger generation of producers and casting people are not familiar with a lot of people of your generation of things. It's really frightening. I mean, they have the technology. They should utilize it, but they don't, sadly.
No, and it isn't. It's like with us, we watched reruns, so we knew all of the old stars from way back. We watched old movies, and we watched all of the old cinema. Right. But yeah, my kids are guilty of that too. Even though we've tried to expose them to as much as we could. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, do you got anything upcoming?
Oh, no, I don't work anymore. I do a clothing line, and basically, keep myself occupied with that.
Oh, what's your clothing line called?
I work with a line called Cabby, and it's just fun. You get a bunch of women together and dress them up.
Yeah.
And I love it. I do it with an old girlfriend of mine from the University of Maryland. So, old friends, new friends, it's just fun.
Nice. I hope somebody, sends you a really good script so we can see you again, because I miss having a Rebeca Arthur viewing experience. I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you. I have a very dear friend who wants to start a campaign to get me on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
Cracks me up.
You should,
Like, yeah, then they'd be like, Rebecca who? But that's okay.
So I've got
it all has followed going in a whole loop. It started out, nobody knew who I was. Then it was, you're that girl. Then it's, you're Balky's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then they knew who I was. And then everywhere I went, I'd be recognized. And then it just went backwards. It went back to you're Balky's girl, you're that girl. Where'd you go to high school? That kind of thing, all the way back to oblivion.
So I got some jokes for you, and
Okay.
these are not my stage show jokes. These are dad jokes. What do you call a boy that doesn't masturbate?
Oh, I do not know.
A liar.
So that is a dad joke.
Yeah. Here's a Christmas one. Why are Christmas trees better than men?
I don't know.
Even the smaller ones give satisfaction.
Oh.
I'm sending so many Christmas cards out with that joke in it, by the way. I just mailed my Christmas cards out today. They're going to love it.
You've already done your Christmas cards? I haven't even done that.
Well, it's funny. I used to do it mid-month, right? And then a couple of years ago, for the first time ever, I didn't get Christmas cards until January 2nd. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing it early so I can get my cards, right on time for Christmas. So I do it early now.
Well, I used to send pictures of my daughters, and now they're grown up, and I'm like, that's just weird.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a picture of my dogs and go, well, this is what I do now. Because I just got this little rescue puppy, so I'm going to take a picture of her and my little yellow lab and put them in front of the tree and go, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm going to go cry because dreams really do come true. And I mean it. I mean it. You've been just so fabulous. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year with your family.
Have a fabulous holiday. And thank you so much.
Yes, and be safe out there.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. Rebeca Arthur. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh, my God. What a sweet, sweet lady. And what a great laugh she has. I am so friggin' blessed that we got to talk today. I really enjoyed talking to her. I'm glad I impressed her with my mind there. But I thank God for YouTube because I had some memory refreshers, though. But I'll always remember Rodney and, Scrooged and, Perfect Strangers. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.